Hello, everyone, and for my final gift for this year, I give you a spiritual predecessor. Technically speaking, since this is essentially tied to Advent Children, which we did last year, I guess we could have looked at some of the anime shorts like Lost Order, but it's more of a collection of things. And to be fair, this has also been kind of a long time coming. This is 2001's Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within.
Spiritual
Oh
successor, huh?
boy, oh
A
boy.
predecessor more than anything. This was the very first, you know, movie that Square wanted to do in terms of, with a theatrical international release tied to the Final Fantasy franchise. Because, like I said, around the time they had already done a set of mini OVAs connected potentially to a larger narrative for that essentially is Discount Ghibli called The Legend of the Crystals, that essentially acts as a sequel to Final Fantasy V. But those were either exported later or never at all. I forgot the details. So, for intents and purposes, this was the first one. And this is kind of legendary because it took a long to actually make this movie a reality. Because in true tradition, Square wanted to push the technology they were actually developing, and see if a fully CGI animated movie would have been possible. Keep in mind, around this time, the other CGI animated movies that we had got mostly were Toy Story, and I think around this time also Ants. So for standards there wasn't so much. So obviously for the time this was actually pretty impressive for what they did. These days you can argue it has aged as much as CGI from literally 2001 can had. But
Mm.
you have to remember the technology video space, and reflectively this costed 137 million, which for 2001 standard was a lot. Not the highest budget for a movie of the time, but it was almost there
Throw
actually.
throw in the marketing cost, and the
That
arguable
too.
total was 167 million.
Sakaguchi, as we noted also for Final Fantasy VII, he wanted to tell another story about coping, the grieving of the loss of his mother, and how this can be translated into a proper story. The thing is that this really has very little to do with the canons, the cliches, and the tropes that you think of Final Fantasy until this point. It really doesn't have anything. It's not really set on a fictional planet. It's set on planet Earth, so the best you can say is that, hey, if you wanted your head canon, this is what happened to the world that Lightning created at the end of Lightning Returns. Also, this was caused the merge to happen with Enix because at that point Square was really running on humans and had to scramble with something with what they had. But as we also noted in a couple other places, this was also the project that essentially Square was ultimately focusing on, and as a result, drained money and resources from everything else that was going on. This is why a lot of the PS1 games were not exported to Europe, why Final Fantasy VIII had its own travel development cycle, and why consequentially Xenogears had its own travel development cycle. It's essentially a chain reaction. If you're familiar with Linkara, his joke about every bad comic being traceable to Countdown, it's kind of like this. Everything that Square was doing in the second half of the 90s, any kind of problem that he had can be traced back to this, essentially.
Wow.
You have to blame this thing. And you know what? Sakaguchi, for good measure, instead of employing people like Nojima, or even writing himself the script, which he did. He wrote conceptually the original story. He had two Western people for the screenplay. Al Reinert, which was a journalist, and his major, writing credit that I can find for a movie is Apollo 13. And the other is Jeff Vintar, a guy which at this time this was made, had only one thing under his belt: Long, Hello, and Short Goodbye, a movie, a German crime film that I have no idea even what it's about. And after this, he went to wrote the I, Robot 2004 movie, which I detest to no end. So, and to good measure, Dweebs, guess who one of the producers is among Sakaguchi himself?
Chris Lee, wasn't it?
Chris Lee, the producer of, among other things, Ballistic X vs. Sever.
One of the worst
Wow.
Antonio
So this
Banderas
is
films I've ever
So you know
seen.
what?
so this
We're in
is
good hands.
so wow.
Clearly we
So
are.
so So I guess Chris Lee has experience in throwing away a bunch of money on something no one wanted to see.
And throwing
Alright.
money they did, because this had a budget like I said, of 137 million and a recouping of only 85.1. So people went to see this, but not that much. We can find out later who this was in competition with, but we can actually
Alright.
start before, right as the Columbia, logo, the Lady of Liberty with the light, the torch flashes onto you. In 3, 2, 1, click.
Pedro,
Yeah, sure.
I imagine that Richard was still enjoying a nice long nap, maybe.
After Xenogears.
I mean-
Like I said,
but
also,
here's the thing. But that's the thing. That reminds me, Shiro. Like, they said that this was your introduction to the Final Fantasy franchise.
Yeah.
See, that's like being introduced to the. Well, Shiro, how about this? I was introduced to the Avatar franchise via the Shyamalan movie.
Okay,
I was
okay,
just,
well,
I was just
okay.
about to say.
Square pictures. That's not even a square. That's
Okay.
a bloody rectangle.
Okay. So, yeah, as Stuart mentioned, this movie actually managed to lose over $100 million, and it's one of the reasons why Square Pictures was discontinued. Who are Square Pictures, you may be asking? Yeah, Square used to have a film division. This movie killed it, among other things.
Hey, don't worry. I'm sure the next time Square Enix makes a movie based off Final Fantasy, it'll be go.
Well,
See, the thing, they made this movie division specifically for this movie, but since this movie bombed big time, Square Pictures was basically canned.
now, okay, I will also state another thing it killed off. It killed off a concept at the time. See, believe it or not, this movie was supposed to kickstart the concept of artificial actors. What do I mean by that? Well, our main character is Aki Ross, played by Ming-Na Wen, and to be fair, at the time, Ming-Na Wen wasn't as bankable a name. Like, the only big thing she'd been in at the time was Mulan. She was kind of a regular on the show called ER, but no, at the time, they were actually...
I mean,
they,
ER was a big deal.
Yeah, it was what George Ford promoted George Clooney drove.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, the thing is, though, she only had a recurring role in that. She wasn't, like, one of the big stars. Like, let me put it like this. This would be like if you starred, like, Chris Evans before he was in Captain America, essentially.
Yeah, so not another teen movie?
Also, Pusha.
But anyway,
I was gonna say The Perfect Score.
And yeah,
But
It
anyway,
also has
visuals in-
Scarlett Johansson.
and yeah, the visuals in this movie have aged considerably.
but
Again, you
anyway,
have to think about it. This was 2001, so obviously for the time it was made, it was impressive. But yeah,
it was, don't worry, it was just a dream. But yes, this is our character, Aki Ross. What's special about her is that she was to be touted as the start of this concept of an artificial actor or actress. What was that going to be? Essentially, you would have digital beings who could be recurring throughout films, who would essentially be able to fill different roles or whatnot. Different voice actors could portray them, but the actor on screen would essentially be the same. Which...
It's not what Hollywood's trying to do now.
that's a bit...
okay, that it's not exactly, because instead of an AI, they will still use an actor or an actress behind.
Mhm.
You have to think more like of a VTuber, the equivalent.
I mean, technically, we're still doing that with mocap technology.
Okay,
With mocap technology, they don't always use the mocap actor as the voice.
Now, I know to some people this may seem weird, but you have to know. Back when CGI was really, really growing to be a thing, there was a time where people thought CGI could actually replace live-action films in and of themselves. I mean,
Also,
obviously that's not the case now, but okay, if this movie had not failed the way it had, it is possible that they could have eventually started it. I only find it weird because wouldn't it be simpler for people to just make their own specific characters for franchises?
Old New York.
Old New York City.
there's a reason why it's labeled like that. Also, you may notice, well, you haven't noticed, but for the credits, this Final Fantasy movie is not scored by Nobuo Uematsu, which at the time would have made sense, but instead by Elliot Goldenthal.
Yeah.
And before you tell me, well, Nobuo Uematsu is a video game composition, a movie. Both Silent Hill movies had the score by Akira Yamaoka, and it's actually probably the best thing in that. So really, this movie had no excuse.
Remember, Nobuo Uematsu did the score for Advent Children. So.
Now,
also, Elliot Goldenthal was mainly known for doing the scores for the Joel Schumacher Batman movies.
Wow, the writing really was on the wall with this movie, wasn't it?
Again,
this looks like a PS3 game.
in general, in terms of conception, you can tell that Square was once again already started with this trying to appeal to a Western audience, and as you can see, it really didn't work out.
It's amazing, Edge. It's amazing how now on the PS5 we can play a Final Fantasy game that looks better than this movie.
Okay.
To be fair, considering technology, I think this looks more Returnal instead.
Okay. And again,
that's actually a good segue. This Final Fantasy movie doesn't have any of the characters having particular unique weapons, nor having each character having a weapon unique of their own. Like, say, one has a sword, one has a pistol, one has a fisticuffs. No, everyone, also Pepsi. Because this is, even in a post-apocalyptic setting, they still want to have
Pepsi
and Sony. And MasterCard and Qualm.
Every character has the same generic gun, and it's so boring.
Okay. Like, I really
They're trying to be Mass Effect, even though Mass Effect wasn't a thing yet.
The thing I have to wonder is, why did they go for such a departure from Final Fantasy when the movie has its title on it? And I know before anyone brings up, well, hey, isn't like almost every Final Fantasy game totally different from the last? And yes, you would be right. However, there are still recurring elements that tie them together as Final Fantasy games. Yeah. Mystical creatures, chocobos, or again, sometimes a mix of technology and magic. Like, regardless of how technological things get, there always is at least some form of magic, which I guess some may say this movie technically has, given the titular spirits.
Actually, that's already, again, as we mentioned also in the intro, yes, this Final Fantasy movie, instead of being set on a fictional planet, it's only set on planet Earth, a post-apocalyptic one at that, but still planet Earth.
Also, Pedro, it's not Mass Effect. I think you're trying to think of Star Trek, if that's what you want to go with the comparison.
I wouldn't really use Star Trek as
honestly. Despite being more technological, but the wrist, GPS that she has reminds me more of Fallout's Paperboy.
I'm honestly fine with this being on Earth because honestly, most of the worlds we're on are essentially just Earth and everything but named. So.
Oh, that's part of the charm instead. It creates a personal identity of the movie. Instead,
just call it something else.
Yeah.
If this movie was just called, that's the thing. If this movie was just called The Spirits Within, and nothing else, people wouldn't go see it because I get the feeling people knew that this movie was boring as shit.
People didn't see it anyway, and B. All right, then, Shiri, we'll have it your way. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our commentary of something else, The Spirits Within.
Yes. I was talking about
the Gravcon unit.
I was talking about naming the planet something else, not the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it.
Also,
sure.
When they say Western sensibilities, like, what do you mean? We're not this boring.
Yeah, we really aren't. Like, part of it, in fact, usually the idea is that Western marketing is meant to be more exciting than the more basic Japanese one. So,
well, again, in general, instead of having people with swords and more over top action, instead look at that. Basically, Gears of War style power armor and and assault rifles.
Except, newsflash, we have plenty of cool weapons and swords over here in the West. So this is Japanese devs giving Westerners what they think they know that they want.
Well, that's what they said, Jova. Once again, it's a thing that's still happening to this very day. Japanese companies trying to appeal to the Western market, but not understanding the fact that a lot of people in the West just are perfectly fine with their standards.
So in terms of what competition this film had, this film came out in July of 2001.
Oh, summer release, magnificent.
Yeah. There wasn't any competition on the same day it came out, but within like the immediate week before and after, they still had to compete with films like Cats and Dogs, Scary Movie 2, Legally Blonde, and the following week, Jurassic Park 3.
I can tell that probably people were more interested in Scary Movie 2 out of all of them. Maybe Cats and Dogs for the younger audience.
So this movie, again, in spite of
AKA me.
So this movie, as part of that budget, has quite a noticeable cast. There's Ming-Na Wen, who may not have been the biggest, but retrospectively is a pretty big actress. It also had Alec Baldwin, who was definitely big at the time, James Woods, another top-notch, Donald Sutherland, frickin' Ving Rhames, and Steve Buscemi.
Also among other people, Keith David as well.
Nice. Now, one thing that was received positively was Aki's appearance by critics, most notably because of the rendering of her hair. Because, yeah, as we all know, hair is definitely one of the toughest things to render.
Yeah.
In fact, again, Square really did go all in, to the point where Aki Ross even made it onto the magazine of a top Hot 100.
Also, as a kind of a joke, I think it's one of the special features of the DVD, even if it's not included in this movie that we're watching right now. There is also a sort of a clip where Aki and a bunch of the enemies, like the enemies that our heroes are killing now, the Phantoms, play together a version of Thriller from Michael Jackson for some reason.
Cute.
So here's what most likely happened. You see, after the ending of Mulan 2, everything went to shit, and more than just China, the whole world went to shit. And the post-apocalyptic result is what we're seeing right now.
So this is Mulan 3.
You can say that again, considering the choice of love interest for Mulan in this movie will be fucking Alec Baldwin.
When you see Alec Baldwin, you will see the ugliness of the human race.
So...
And yeah, again, the closest that you can get to, a bit of variety is that, again, aside from voice acting, obviously, each member of this military team that just rescued Aki Ross from her mission of recovering this plant, again, her mission is to try to recover any life form she can find outside of their biodomes. The members of this dialogue... the members of the team are fairly different physically, so you can, in terms of face, and you will see they're also, body structure and everything. But in terms of their capabilities, very interchangeable. And you know what I'm thinking instead? I'm thinking around 7 years after this movie, Clive Barker's Jericho would take this concept, having a SWAT-like...
Oh my god! That guy whose face we made a big deal of revealing!
That's Alec Baldwin's character. Each of the members of the team, of the Jericho team, would instead have a unique weapon and a unique, type of...
Oh my god. I just realized something. This place here reminds me of the opening place in Tales of Zillia.
So in this case, we have a new New York City. Please pause for any Futurama jokes.
Yeah, but that's the basic gist of it. This movie has little to nothing to do with Final Fantasy. It really doesn't. This was a project that was made because Sakaguchi wanted to make a specific story about life after death because of his mother's passing, and it's one of those things where you can kind of tell that especially after Final Fantasy IX, Sakaguchi was kind of done with Final Fantasy. He wanted to move on and move to other projects.
Such great ventures like Blue Dragon, without a doubt.
Well, yeah,
and the last story.
And, well, to be fair, Lost Odyssey was great, but yeah...
I said the last story.
Yeah. Lost Odyssey was great. The problem is that it was sandwiched between those two games.
Did we cover the last story yet?
I heard it's the real... I hear Lost Odyssey is the real Final Fantasy 13.
Okay.
Pretty much, yeah. Lost Odyssey is a better Final Fantasy game than the Final Fantasies that came out around that time, yeah.
Can I just say, though, it takes special talent to make a Final Fantasy project not in line with the series when, again, the series is incredibly fluid with what it takes to make a Final Fantasy game.
I mean, let's say Final Fantasy 16, where gameplay-wise, it's definitely quite a departure for a lot of stuff. But again, there's also been other Final Fantasy with gameplay departures. But Final Fantasy 16's story is full of Final Fantasy elements, and not to mention plenty of little nods here and there for character arcs that are reminiscent from character arcs of previous games. There's a lot of stuff that's very reminiscent. Like this, on the other hand, like, okay, fine, you want to make a sci-fi setting. Okay, fine. Just just at the very least include other elements. You can include stuff like, I don't know, like robo chocobos, for example. I mean, I know it sounds weird when I put it like that, but at least it would have been a way to implement chocobos.
No!
I'm just trying to think. Like, this guy is supposed to be voiced by Alec Baldwin, but it looks like they mauled him after John Travolta.
Right? I might as well segue into that. Yeah, I think Alec Baldwin is horribly miscast in this role. Because...
Everyone is outside of few roles, but whatever.
Also, oh no, they got him. Whatever it is.
Yeah,
Is this
remember, Joe? But before, the Alec Baldwin's character was infected by being touched by one of the Phantoms. So, this thing basically serves to show how Aki Ross is badass, and she's managing to actually heal the pathogen in time when the odds are impossible.
Since she's a medical doctor, is this supposed to be a reference to her career in ER?
I get. Well, I'm not sure it's casting gag or anything, but whatever. Essentially, these phantoms infect your spirit rather than your body, and if you get infected too much, you essentially lose yourself to them.
Is this one of those movie adaptations where they're like where they do that thing of calling like generic tanks or guns terminology from the game, like this big tank, this big tank here, we called it Chocobo.
Not even that, Webs. Like the only reference to the games you see in this game is, like Teo said, we're going to see a shirt in this movie.
No, not even a shirt. Not even a shirt, Pedro. It's one character who's about to show up actually, and during one pandering shot, there's a chocobo origami, I think.
Like, all you needed to do was have like maybe an actual chocobo, and you would have been so much closer to warranting the name Final Fantasy.
Like I said, or maybe I don't know. Again, try to personalize more the team. Be more of a specialist, even in firearms. There you go. That's our reference. Dr. Sid, not spelled with a C, but with an S for some reason. Played by Donald Sutherland.
My tired ass thought that was Xehanort.
By the way,
he was planning it all along.
He's everywhere.
Not so much, because I wanted to save that for the end, but just to spoil ahead, outside of that cheeky gag in the first Life is Strange, this has got to be the Final Fantasy who is being referenced the least after it was made. There's almost nothing. Analysis from the plant that Aki extracted.
Mm-hmm. Oh my god, I can't believe that Wally ripped this off.
Plant.
You know what's interesting? Technically, this is not the last thing Square Pictures made, because technically the last thing they did was working on Final Flight of the Osiris for the Animatrix.
Animatrix, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering why this looked familiar. It's like, why is this wrong with the Animatrix?
Final Flight of the Osiris. In fact, Dej, if you compare the model of the African guy that we saw with the African guy from Final Fantasy, you can tell they reused the model most likely because they look super similar. So,
man, how sad is it when the most redeeming thing you've done is make one of probably the better shorts on a franchise that was kind of sinking at the time? Like, okay, I really do not joke when I say that Matrix had one of the most quickest, rise and then fall
Hey,
to
man,
and from
strong guy,
fame
yeah.
I've ever seen before.
Well, I will argue the first movie wasn't even that great to begin with. Honestly.
Also, as you can imagine, also this Final Fantasy movie, which normally would have a story of character moving from location to location, you think of it, the entire movie will be like this: Aki Ross going through different locations, and this being the hub, in order to get these particular life forms that contain a spirit. But no, most of the movie will be in this location, and the second half will be in one another. Like the movie has similar to Advent Children. One of the big problems of this movie is that the number of total locations are very limited, and the characters do not move that much from one place to another.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, it's the core concept of Final Fantasy: the journey, the going from point A to point B. By going through X, Y, and Z set pieces. My God, Donald Sutherland sounds like he doesn't even want to be here.
See. He sounded more. See, this is meant to be, real life emulation, and yet he had more life in his performance in Astro Boy 2009.
Which is
Which is a good
interesting.
movie anyway.
Which is it's interesting you say that, Tio, because half the viewers pretty much had the exact same opinion. You just replaced Donald Sutherland with Ming Na.
Oh, really? Interesting.
What?
I
Yeah,
guess
apparently-
they thought the developer was too deadpan.
Yeah, apparently
Yeah.
half the audience thought her acting was flat and lifeless. The other half thought she was actually really expressive.
Did Zack Snyder take over?
No,
the
it's too
hell?
colorful, Pedro.
No, this reminds me of the flashback dream sequences from BVS, though. Like,
I mean, to be fair, yeah, these are recurring nightmares that Aki Ross is having. I might as well actually tell about this early on. I actually don't mind about
right
Aki
there.
Ross.
Hold on, Taylor, right there. See, there's a chocobo silhouette in her shirt. See, this is total Final Fantasy. See. Go on, Taylor.
Hold on, this is James Wood's introduction.
And yet
And
he
yeah,
looks more like Jack
Jim,
Nicholson.
I don't know about you guys, but I do wonder who is the villain.
I
What?
wonder.
He's missing
Necessarily.
sunglasses, and it would be like a black-haired version of Albert Wesker.
Like, okay, to be fair, I guess the logical question would be, what reason does any human have to be the bad guy in this?
That's a good question, Jova. Allow me to answer. James Woods plays a very entrenched in his ideal,
As you know.
stereotypical military general who's obsessed with human settlement to focus on being weaponized, gaining power, and being militaristic.
Is he a James Cameron character?
Honestly,
Hey.
I was thinking of something else, but sure, you can go.
Okay,
with that,
okay.
I guess.
Oh, what was what you were thinking of?
So just to do a recap, let's see. James Wood's character looks like Jack Nicholson. Alec Baldwin's character looks more like John Travolta, and Steve Buscemi's character looks more like Nathan Drake.
By the way, that woman on the council, she's played by Gene Simmons.
Gene, what are you doing here? Anyway, yeah, like we're gotta give it some credit though too. James Woods is probably the only actor in this movie that actually sounds invested somewhat.
I guess I've never seen a performance for him where it doesn't seem like he was not giving it his all.
Aside from Hercules, I haven't seen him that much in general. And from what I heard, his acting is probably the only good thing about him, because IRL is not exactly the greatest person alive.
The character's
Wait,
delivery
wait,
matches the aesthetic.
Oh, listen to this. I love this one. This is the best scene in the movie for me.
Yeah.
Listen. The spirit. So the Earth has a spirit.
Hey guys, Final Fantasy VII called. They said, "Why are you ripping us off?"
Listen. Yeah, here it is.
Good lord!
It's probably not a good idea that this character just completely put out the absurdity of the premise.
Okay, okay, but like I mentioned though, Sakaguchi, maybe I accidentally put the tape on rewind, but didn't you already kind of do this with Final Fantasy VII?
I have to be honest, Jova, I will take this because at least it's giving some identity to the movie instead of, wanting to be hyper-realistic, being a sci-fi but focus on, more realistic rules.
That is fair, but again, my counterpoint is, hey, I can just play 7 instead of this. Now granted, maybe this is for more of a movie-going audience, but also another counterpoint, Final Fantasy VII was frickin' popular to the point where even non-gamers were aware of it at the time, so...
Well, you mentioned Peril, Jova. James Wood's character, as you can tell that it's clearly a pastiche of all the, the board members of Shinra, who wants to just seize power and, focus on militarization rather than ecological, preservation and research.
Not a bad concept. I guess the issue, though, is, at least in Final Fantasy VII, it wasn't like the entire world was, a crap sack reality, so it made sense you would want to, abuse and control it. Here, though, my dude, as far as we know, the only hospitable place is New York City.
James,
Also, that outfit, he couldn't look any more evil if he tried.
I know, right? Like you said, it's like a blacker version of Wesker. There you go, that's one of our major twists early on. Aki Ross herself is infected, but she manages to suppress rather than actually infect everyone else.
Wait, hold on. And that's just it? We just end and no follow-up? No potential rebuttal? Just...
Look, I know that it's kind of, sorry, go on.
Also, Jova, the most ironic thing is since you're making comparisons between this and Final Fantasy VII, one of the few bits of praise this movie got was that the story and premise are original.
At the time this was made, I suppose, when it came to the movie panorama, but even so, there are better sci-fi products you can see.
I guess movie-wise it is, I guess...
Yeah, that's what they theorized.
And yeah, it's like I said, okay, fellow scriptwriters, here's a tip. If your producer is not buying the premise and finds it silly, don't work his objection into the plot.
Also, yes, since this is still an early 2000s movie, we gotta have to ship Alec Baldwin's character and Aki Ross. If I recall correctly, it's more of a case that they had a history together, but now they're separated. But obviously, by the end of the movie, they're gonna get back together. But it's still, there's not much chemistry between these two, let's just say that.
Okay, now it's time for, I guess, banter between these two.
I'm sorry, you legit have a big revelation, and yet you don't show the council's reaction to the fact that she has legit one of the dangerous spirits with infecting her. I'm sorry, that'd be like if suddenly Vader revealed that he's Luke's father, and then we cut to just a scene of the Millennium Falcon without seeing Luke's reaction.
Also, for more stereotyping, Steve Buscemi's character is supposed to be a creep that tries to constantly flirt with the girl on the team.
So he's supposed to be the Lancer.
Oh my god, he literally stopped the elevator just to give them a moment. Why?
Get it? Because it's cute, apparently. But whatever. Might as well actually, use this to mention. I don't actually technically mind on paper Aki Ross is a protagonist, The movie doesn't really give her much material to work with, but I get, I get the potential of the character in herself. And if given proper circumstances, she would be developed. But because this is one of those movies products, like we said, that almost never gets referenced at all, Aki Ross never had a possibility to shine or appear in any of the Final Fantasy crossovers that happened over the years. So unfortunately, she's still stuck with this.
That said,
the problem. This movie doesn't have any flashbacks, which means any kind of backstory that these characters may have is told to us via dialogue rather than shown to us.
That said, the backstory seems to make Aki out to be a dick, since apparently she just up and left her boyfriend without a word. Jesus, the only way it could have been worse is if there was a Dear John letter involved.
But yeah, she's also speaking about the actual spirits. And again, because unfortunately we're cutting all of the journey for some reason, probably because of the cost we could not animate everything, she just tells us what we already collected in terms of animals. Because again, as Dr. Seed theorized, collecting all of these particular spirits which are residing in some specific form of life that he's collecting would be the key to properly getting to understand better the phantoms, which are these enemies that are trying to destroy humanity and save humanity from their disaster in imminent. Because again, the barrier cannot hold. Jane Woo's character, instead, on the other hand, wants to focus on militarization and trying to actually suppress all of the phantoms by developing more powerful weapons. That's really the gist of the movie.
Who are you trying? Decepticons?
I mean,
again, I know it's a bit of a stereotype in itself, but over the years we've kind of seen this kind of jingoistic military people pop up all over the world. So I get the idea there is a precedent of sorts.
Yeah, but it's like you're in no position to do that right now because the world is kind of screwed.
It's the kind of thing that I was theorizing for the early Gears of War games, in a sense that this setting doesn't really allow the idea of having a villain amongst the humans. The idea that someone wants to screw actively over the human race for personal profit because the stakes are too high at the moment.
And thankfully the writers were smart enough not to pull that kind of stuff.
Well, they did it for this one instead, like I said.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I was talking about the Gears of War series. Like, the writers there were smart
No.
enough not to suddenly have, some human who totally believes that the bloodthirsty locust
the
could
locust
work
needs to
with
be
us.
respected or to be allied with, but...
Yeah, another big mistake on part of Sakaguchi and everybody involved was attempting this now because the technology was just too young. It was just not there yet.
the project was ambitious.
It was just like they should have waited until the technology evolved so that it could be produced more cheaply and more effectively because it was a clear case that this movie was trying to really ride on the novelty factor of it's an entire movie where the people look real but they're made in a computer. See,
this is a bit of
Gone.
bit of history for Columbia Pictures. Actually, this was the first theatrically released animated film they released since of all films, the Care Bears movie 2: A New Generation, back in 1986. So,
Which is
15 years of waiting if you're a fan of Columbia Pictures' animated catalogue.
It's kind of a sad thing that James Wood's character, despite being over-the-top evil, actually does have a point that, Aki Ross literally being infested with one of the dangerous spirits could be affecting her in a way that they don't know.
The thing is that he's using this to, instead of actually raising a good point, he's using this to his advantage, to manipulate the politics into getting into a position of power.
Again, my frustrating point, though, is like, why does nobody else maybe suspect that just maybe there might be some negative repercussions to her being infected by the spirit within?
look, this looks like a boring episode of Reboot. But,
I'm actually instead reminded of Oddworld instead.
That's the other thing. But that's the thing, Jova. That's one of the big problems with this movie for me. The fact that James Woods' character, combined with the fact that he's the only one who seems to have any kind of life and agenda on him, the fact that he calls out the absurdity of what the main characters are doing really undermines the plot.
Like,
combined with the fact that the characters are as interesting as pieces of toast.
I guess, to be fair, the idea is that he's wrong, but the thing is, also, who are these Metroid rejects?
It's the classic scale of cynicism versus idealism, trying to have faith while trying instead to be logical.
I feel like the problem is that there's no in-between, though. It's either, you're totally on board with Aki, or you're the bad guy.
Yeah, basically. But, well, Jova, how about this? To use another Square product, They also wanted us to disagree with Nightmare Max, didn't they? And look how that turned out. So,
My God, this dialogue.
You also notice that while not as desaturated as Advent Children, the color palette in this is just not pleasing to see. Lots of grays.
And
it reeks of late 90s, early 2000s sci-fi movies. It's clearly going for that aesthetic.
Also, it looks like Colonel Woods may have had a point because the narration from Aki suggests that the spirits within her are starting to win. So, So let me get this straight. The movie is just saying that he's actually in the right to be worried about her. Like, whether or not he's doing it for his own evil goals, apparently there is problems going on with her from having herself be infected by spirits. Movie, what are you trying to tell?
In terms of, as for what I think of the look of the movie so far, I do like the environments.
Oh, yeah.
The character models... props for Aki's hair, but I mean, I know saying this looks like a PS3 game since considering this movie came out in 2001 sounds like praise, but
I was going to say that.
We do live in an era. We do live in an era now where we can play games that look better than this.
That's why I said, Webs, they jumped the gun too soon. They should have waited a few more years before attempting a movie like this, because the technology was just not there yet.
The King's Grave, for comparison, instead, at least for the time being, is a technical marvel. Sure, you can argue that probably in around 10 years from now, it probably also will have aged in terms of,
well, I guess that speaks how much volume technology changes rapidly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this.
I will say that Advent Children aged better than this, definitely.
Definitely. But I'm gonna give them credit. While the locations may not be the most unique, I do agree that the rendering for the time it was created is top notch. Like, I could see this having been like the Toy Story 4 of its time. And I'm specifically talking about the visuals, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and Jova... Sorry.
Go on. No, go on.
And Jova brought up an earlier point that is also another major problem of the movie. The script. The dialogue is dry. So dry. Like, even when the movie tries to have any kind of humor to give the fucking characters some kind of life, it's always so dry.
Again, well, James Wood's character aside.
I honestly have to wonder if James Wood ad-libbed a lot of his lines.
I wonder, yeah, because every time James Wood speaks, the movie suddenly feels like there's a minor spark of life in it.
Again, I find it so odd with the choice of the two people for the screenplay, because, Apollo 13 is a movie that relies on very little dialogue and more tense scenes that do not have that much, much acting going on. And the other guy went on to write, again, a movie where they try to sell, Will Smith as a, cyber detective.
I'm sorry, that line. What's it doing? Hoping for life to return? Or maybe it's just flying looking for food. Like,
birds don't really think about the frailty of life. I don't have the brain capacity for that.
Jova, is this Final Fantasy VII's bad ending? Or everything's gone to shit and the planet's dead, but they want to revive it?
No, because Final Fantasy VII is not set on Earth.
Well, no. Here's what happened. It turns out the name that we gave the world of Final Fantasy VII was actually a lie. It was Earth. We just renamed it so that we feel better about ourselves for wrecking the planet.
I mean, given how...
my head, Kent.
Given how 10 is apparently in continuity with 7, that would imply that the world has gone through a name change or whatnot, so yeah,
it's more of a case where Shinra actually, built a rocket and everyone flew onto the Gaia of 7.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe they pulled a Xenogears and went to Earth using a rocket.
And yeah, this is what happens. The Phantoms capture your soul and literally devour it. And yeah, now you're starting to put the pieces together. The rest of the firing team, Alec Baldwin's, team, is just there to be cannon fodder.
Wow.
They do not really have
same-
much of a characterization aside from those couple of scenes at the beginning, and now we're just existing here to be picked one by one before the movie ends.
So it's like most of Morpheus's gang in Matrix 1.
Also,
So you were saying, Pedro, about your head.
Sorry, go on.
So you were saying, Pedro, about your headcanon?
No, I'm still going with my headcanon. This is secretly Mulan free. Go on.
And you waste actors like Ving Rhames and Steve Buscemi on literal extras. Are you fucking high?
So let me expand upon what Teo just said. Like, see, here's the thing. Like, there is such a thing as using a death of a character to raise stakes. The thing is, usually what happens is in movies like these is you develop most of the characters, specifically the ones that you want the audience to care about, and you always have at least one or two characters who are lesser developed and are potentially there just so we can have the villain or the monster or whatever it is, depending on the movie, kill those people to raise the stakes, to show that, you know, this monster / villain means business, so that the audience can, at the very least, feel the stakes. So there's such a thing as that. The problem with this is that, again, all of them are cannon fodder, like Teo said, and you might, hell, if Aki died right now, the impact would be the same as killing the others, because she's as interesting as the others.
but guys, she's the one who can fix the world with these spirits, so she dies, all hope is lost. And I could not care less.
That's the big problem with this movie, because the movie is devoid of any kind of substance. It's impossible to care about anything.
Let me put it this. There are many different variants of me just, like, you know, not finding much reason to care. Okay, there's about where either things are too dour, there's about where maybe things just don't make any sense, so there's no point in caring. But with this one, I think this is the variant where, I don't know, it feels like nothing has happened really. Like, sure, we've gotten some information, sure, we're seeing stuff technically happen on the screen, but really, what exactly has happened
Also,
plot-wise?
Yes, movie. I saw Terminator 2. It was better than this.
It was. Looking at this, I'm starting to realize what this looks like as well. This looks like one of those obscure PC games that Mandalore Gaming reviews.
Yeah.
And they shot her for some reason.
He lied to me, shot at me. But I guess another consequence of the travel moving cycle and jumping the gun a bit too much with the technology is, again, the fact that the movie doesn't have too much time to breathe. Like, this kind of complex storytelling should be done in either like a 2.5-hour movie or in a mini series of sorts. This should have been at least 2 or 3 60-minute movies.
Like, I mean, I get it. The overall premise is that spirits are alive and angry, everything apparently has a spirit or whatnot, and we gotta fix whatever's going on with them to heal the planet, I guess, but...
And save humanity.
I guess it's just... I don't feel like I know enough to really care. Like, I don't know much about this.
And there goes another one.
Well, I guess that was one of Woods' goons, since he was trying to kill Aki, so... Karma or something? I don't know.
If I can offer a bit of praise towards this movie, even a bit. Okay, it's not my favourite Elliot Goldenfall score in the in the world, but aside from James Woods, that's like the other thing that has like even a little spark of life in it.
Again, I'm just annoyed by the conceptual level, the fact that they wanted to focus, instead of having a movie score, instead of trusting their go-to composer to actually be able to make a movie score.
Which, as he himself proved later with having children, he's perfectly capable of doing so. Allow me to remind you, just as something with Eternal Diva, where Hino didn't do the stupid thing of hiring an anime composer. He got Nishihura to do the score for that movie.
Like I said, also, the Silent Hill movies, for all the problems that they have, and trust me, they do have all the problems, their scores are the best part of it because Akira Yamaoka went to compose them. It's such a natural, thought process. You want to make an adaptation from a video game, get to the composer of a series.
Yeah, speaking of video game movies in 2001, that was one of the original ideas that we're going to do for the first Tomb Raider movie. Just have Nathan McCree, the guy who did the music for the first 3 games, do the music for that, but for whatever reason it didn't happen, and the actual composer they did end up with only had like a few days to do the music, and it shows.
Brilliant.
Uh-huh.
I can't believe Aki Ross is fucking dead.
So
wow, this new character who they built the whole marketing around, and they kill her.
So
like, not even halfway into the movie.
Essentially, we're gonna do a sort of something similar to Mind Meld, connecting Alec Baldwin's character and Aki Ross, to see if they can, rescue her.
I mean, the Ni no Kuni movie sucked, but at least they got Joe Hisaishi to make the bloody music, for fuck's sake.
But hey, guys, it turns out we got the Seventh Spirit while we were on that venture. You'd be forgiven for not noticing that and all the chaos, but
so yeah,
that
now
happened.
If I recall correctly, Alec Baldwin's character is gonna experience the same kind of nightmare that Aki Ross is having.
And this
the moon is huge.
It's symbolic.
But going back to my stuff about stuff not having happened, like technically we have gotten one of the important MacGuffins needed, and it feels like barely anything in the plot has changed as a result of that. Like, I feel like, we should feel something having changed after attaining such an important MacGuffin, but we don't.
I get not wanting to make the movie attached to any previous. I get not wanting to make the movie attached to any other Final Fantasy game, because otherwise you'd end up confusing the audience who have to play like a really long game to understand the movie. But
just
to not have any connection to it at all aside from the name is
it's like
a choice.
It's like I said, it's so easy to tie it to Final Fantasy without having it be tied to any specific game. Maybe
was there ever a Final Fantasy anime?
Yes,
Unlimited.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. Unlimited also got dicked over by this movie, apparently.
Yeah, it was mostly unfinished, and it has never been redistributed since I think 2004 with the DVDs. It's the kind of media that I think Discotheque would benefit in trying to re-release at some point.
I'm curious. Okay? We know that the anime turned out to be a mess, but how was it shaping up before it got cut?
Well, again, straightforward in terms of storyline. 2 kids are essentially transporting to a parallel from the real world to a parallel one, and they need to find essentially their parents while aiding a figure called Kaze into going. And essentially, each episode is them going to a different location, meeting the recurring villain there. And having occasionally some elements from the series like chocobos, bulgos, the summoning spirits. There is much more stuff than this in that. Even if it's a mess.
Hell, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna go here as well. Like the Ratchet & Clank movie. Was at the very least a Ratchet & Clank movie. A bad one, but at least it wasn't a Ratchet & Clank movie.
Alright, I have to give another critique. Now, say what you will about Ming-Na Wen's acting, but whoever developed Aki, don't get me wrong, Aki's a good and fine enough character design, but she looks monotone as well, and that's something that was animated, and I mean, she looks monotone compared to a lot of the other characters. And
it's a problem that Square was, that at least when it came to, localizing in America, Square was having already from the PlayStation days, as we noted, with Xenogears, as in not good having good voice directors.
Oh, it's not so much the voice director I'm talking about, but I mean,
talking about the animation too.
Yeah, Aki's expressions seem monotone even compared to other characters, aside from James Woods' character, because, look, Alec, Steve, and the other girls' expressions, they seem fine, but Aki's have been constantly dull, and I don't get the feeling that it's a character trait, because, her words do not suggest that. And from what I recall, there's no reveal that she suffered a trauma that makes her that.
Yeah, that shot sums up everything. Like you
Also-
just feel like dozing off during this.
Yeah, again, that's our twist, even if it's very, very in your face, and the game will treat it also as a surprise eventually. But yeah, the Phantoms are essentially aliens from another planet, these ghost of aliens from another planet that got catapulted on planet Earth by a meteor.
Yeah, that actually sounds pretty raw.
It's interesting as an idea, but the execution doesn't make it gel well.
The movie doesn't. The movie doesn't know what to do with its ideas. It doesn't.
And they're under arrest.
Yeah, and again, here's James Woods again trying to be as subtle as a brick in your face.
Well, if there's one thing you can't say
Also-
about Square, it's
Oh!
that they
Of
are
course, but of course, we try to have a moment of trying to make the villain more sympathetic, but say, but the Phantoms killed his wife and daughter. Fuck off.
I love how he literally just says, my wife and daughter. Like, I know it's not as you know, but Jesus Christ, this is telegraphed.
And
Yeah,
not
it
to
reminds
really
me-
hurt-
so he has the same backstory as Zemo in Civil War.
I want the Baron Zemo. I want this guy to be, this kind of Emmy, stupidly evil. I don't want him to be sympathetic in the slightest because he doesn't need it.
Hold on. I'm just gonna quote something that Mucho said today because it coincidentally was talking about Final Fantasy. Yes.
And he had to say this in front of his entire squadron. Why?
Because Jova.
As Linkara himself once said, there's a difference between having a sympathetic backstory and being sympathetic.
Yeah.
It's also
Wow.
So, yeah. Now James Wood's brilliant plan, because he wants really badly to climb the political climate in order to despot the council. He wants to do something very, very stupid.
What else is new?
He wants to open slightly for a few seconds the barrier of the city so that some Phantoms can enter, close them immediately, declare a state of emergency, and use that as an excuse to stage a coup d'etat in order to have the military take over.
Question. Wouldn't the council be just a little suspicious that this happened right after he arrested those people? And don't tell me that somehow would not eventually come to light that he arrested them around the same time that the gates were open.
Also, I'm pretty sure these cell blocks are an environmental hazard if those lasers are, supposed to cut off people who wants to trespass.
Maybe it's just a repulsor ray where it just knocks you back.
As for what you said earlier, Joe, about the exposition, well, it's like, remember that bit in Final Fantasy 13 where all of a sudden, for no reason, Vanille starts saying, Pulse and Cocoon are enemies. And blah, blah, blah. It's just even though, as we know, Hope already knows that, but she starts explaining it.
Vanille should also know more about that too.
No, not just that too. It's more so the fact that she starts explaining it without even being asked. Like the writers couldn't come up with any excuse for the character to start explaining that, so they just have Vanille just say it randomly.
And question, why are James Wood's men so loyal to him that they'd be willing to endanger their own city? Like, I'm sorry, no, like, I mean, these are actual real
Loyalty to your boss is more
It's
important.
stupid loyalty, Jodad.
Like, that's the thing, though. Like, normally, at the least give an idea that he's charismatic or he's brainwashed them or something. Like, this is something that, again, as far as we know, could be endangering friends and family of them by letting this in. Like, I mean, the movie just feels so sloppy. It wants to have cool moments, but doesn't do the legwork to actually properly build up to them. So, when we're not having action, it just feels like nothing's happening and it's flipping boring.
That's the twist about the Phantoms. They're not technically, invaders or like that. There's just these ghosts of aliens who just are incompatible with planet Earth.
Okay,
Again, cool concept. It's just that we kind of needed a more build up to this.
I'm sorry, this feels like we got two twists within
And
the
there you
brink
go.
of each other.
Because I'll let you hear about this. Maybe because they're called fucking Phantoms.
Oh my god, you
Are they
jackass!
thieves?
And because of this shit, James Woods underestimates the problem, and now the entire city is fucked.
Yeah, we know the character
Wow.
has a name, but we don't care about his name.
No, because I was about to ask, what's the name of these characters?
The only one I remember is Aki Ross and Dr.
Yeah, the others are just. I mean, they're not remotely interesting, but
there's Aki Ross, there's Gray Edwards, there's Sergeant Ryan Whitaker, Neil Fleming, and Corporal Jane Proudfoot. Oh, get it?
You know
One
what,
of them's called the Proudfoot, like the Proud Clad. Yeah, there's your
like-
Final Fantasy reference.
you know what? Like, I'm gonna stick with the actor names because those names suck.
And of course, James Woods survives this.
Of course he does.
All right,
He's
in case
James
you were
Woods,
wondering, his character's name is General Douglas Hine.
Teo, remember, he's the Lord of the Dead, so of course you can't kill
Also,
him
get it?
properly.
Because Hein was a boss in Final Fantasy 3 instead.
See, here's the problem with this movie, Jova. The thing about this movie, Jova, is that it's much like Dragon Ball Evolution. This movie does not care about developing characters or telling a story. It just cares about moving from plot point to plot point to plot point to plot point without actually bothering to add any actual, ingredients to said sandwich.
And even then, I argue Dragon Ball Evolution still has more in common with source material than this, because at some point Goku has the orange suit. At some point the haircut resembles that. So
At some point Roshi dies.
At some
talking
point, the
about,
Kamehameha happens.
No, actually, I'm not talking about faithfulness to the source material. I'm talking about the script writing process.
Like-
Because the script is written pretty much on the same faults of they just care about moving the plot to plot point to plot point.
Evolution might be a worse movie, but I feel like even that one at least had more of a plot that was moving. At least I got... What the heck?
Jova, you have to specify it's Dragon Ball Evolution because there's an actual movie called Evolution from 2002, I think.
Oh god. Okay.
There's
Dragon
also a
Ball
wrestling stable that.
Dragon Ball Evolution. Even with that film, I felt like it had more of a plot that was actually moving along. This just feels like random stuff happening, which just so happens to get the characters to do what needs to be done here or there. Also, that beast took forever to attack her for some reason.
Well, that's the thing,
quietly.
Jova. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, like you said, like random things happening because the plot requires them to happen without justification. There's also a lot of that stuff in Dragon Ball Evolution where they're in a desert and then all of a sudden they're in a volcano, even though geologically it makes no sense for a volcano to be right next to a desert.
I guess the difference is that it feels like Evolution actually did have the outlines of a plot that was actually moving things along. Let's look at, okay, this movie by comparison, we were supposed to get the 7th and 8th spirits, barely got the 7th one, and that feels like it was an afterthought in the script itself.
And trust me, the last one is basically a cop-out.
So it feels like we're just spinning our wheels, running away from these monsters, which,
Because we spent no time in developing this city, this climatic, escape from it really doesn't feel earned in the slightest. Like, remember how important, one of the reasons why the motorcycle sequence in Final Fantasy VII is so memorable is because it literally caps off the events of Midgar. You spent, even in the original game, not just in the remake, you spent a lot of time in the city, seeing different places, talking to different people about it, including to raise its very center, and the climax is basically being non-stop. So of course it's very memorable, and you're invested in this. But this, on the other hand, you barely see what this city is like.
Yeah, there's no world building whatsoever.
We don't see much of the civilians, just a bit of a personnel.
Like, if anything, it looks more comedic when their souls are ripped out of their bodies than horrifying, because I don't have much reason to care for these citizens.
Hey, Mr. Director Sakaguchi, you know one thing you could have done? You could have done so that instead of all these phantoms looking like generic sci-fi things that are remotely generic, you could have made them into phantom spirit versions of classic Final Fantasy monsters.
Then again, Pedro, even Advent Children was not even committed to that because instead of having, the actual monsters of 7, instead had these generic shadow creatures that Kadash got able to summon.
Oh, sure, that too. Yeah, that was a problem in that movie too.
It took until Kingsglaive to actually have this concept of, gee, if it's supposed to be a Final Fantasy movie, let's have monsters of the series.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to introduce new monsters to the series, that's all well and good too. Like, some of the most iconic monsters came from different installments. But the thing is, ever since the first game, there were recurring elements, starting with 2. So, this is
not even the first one, like I say, in terms of monsters. Remember stuff like the Behemoth,
the goblins,
the Pisco demons.
Well, that's my point, though. It's like, as early as the second game, it was recurring elements from the predecessor.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But hey, I guess at least so far, all of Edward's team is alive still.
I think already one died previously, but again, because we're so underdeveloped, you don't even, to get track on who's dead and who's not.
Well, from what I can gather, Steve Buscemi, Corporal Jane, and Ving Rhames...
Did Ving Rhames' character, died or not?
No. I think he's the black guy on the vehicle still.
Yeah. Okay, then.
So I guess they're fine. Again, though, to be fair, to your point, it says a lot that we can barely keep track of who's who with just how dull and
it's the
lacking
host.
in
It's
character.
the host. It's the 2 pretty boys from the host all over again. Except now it's a bunch of whole
my
people.
God, really?
Yeah, that's the movie's attempt at humor. Say something, and he says, "Ouch." That counts as a joke. That's what apparently these writers count as a joke.
That's not the joke you make. When someone tells you say something, you say something.
Also, no doc, no drugs. Why not? They can help with the pain. Does this character...
He's just that tough, Jova, don't you know?
Is this the character that's voiced by Keith David?
No.
Keith David was one of the council members.
Oh, right.
This guy is played by Ving Rhames.
Okay.
Again, Barrett, you are not. I'm sorry.
Well, no one can be as cool as Barrett.
But people on the internet told me that you're not supposed to like Barrett.
Please tell me the bad.
Those people are wrong.
Did Square really? Did Square really just pull the black guy dies first of the group?
Well, okay, I don't remember. I think someone genuinely died from the team beforehand.
Yeah, we've had dead people before this guy, Joe. To be fair.
Well, to be fair though, those were faceless goons of James Woods.
I think at least the pilot died.
Technically, we had one member of the gang. Even if he didn't have any lines, he was still technically a member of this gang. So technically, he's the second to die, not the first.
And like I said, Joe, because these characters are so underdeveloped anyway, how much does it even matter anyway?
Yeah, honestly.
You can tell me Steve Buscemi died first, and we're like, oh, really?
You know what? That's actually a fair point.
And you know what's the funniest thing? Around the same time, Steve Buscemi was also in Armageddon, and instead he's on the surviving team.
Wasn't Steve Buscemi in Monsters Inc. the same year?
Yes, as Randall.
Okay. Steve Buscemi's character on the left there is still alive, so there's that. Also, are we not even going to see Ving Rhames' character's death?
I think we will, Drova, don't worry.
Let me guess, he's going to end up staying behind to buy them time.
Well, yeah, he's literally being impaled in the rubble, so he cannot move.
Although they did say that they have the tools to cut him out on our ship, so why not go back and help him?
Because he said that he will just slow him down.
Yeah,
I get the feeling when it comes to Steve Buscemi's character, they're trying to repeat.
I guess she is going back for him. Well,
I guess
she's getting supplies.
Oh.
Yeah.
Go on.
I get the feeling what they're trying to do with Steve Buscemi's character is they're trying to do the same thing they did with Mouse in Matrix 1. Because remember, Mouse it was also very and he also had kind of a pervert aspect to him. So I get the feeling that's what they're going for.
Essentially, if I recall correctly, they're setting up this particular ship to actually fly. I guess, yeah, we can talk about that. The one other remote thing that resembles a bit Final Fantasy is the design of the flying vehicles, but even then, it's not that much, to be honest. If anything, I'm reminded of the technology of Final Fantasy VIII, which, as I said, is very weak compared to the other games.
Also, while I like Aki's design, I do feel like her outfit is a little bit on the generic side.
It's a generic jumpsuit. Again, this is the kind of outfit that Stranger of Paradise used to deliberately reference, this era, but in an ironic way.
Yeah.
And like I said, this movie, aside from that joke in Life is Strange 1, hasn't really been referenced anywhere. The score is not in theater even. Aki Ross never appeared in Dissidia or Record Keeper, The story hasn't been referenced whatsoever. Phantoms have never appeared as, with those design as, enemies in other games, or, as Easter eggs or anything. Not in the technology has been referenced. There is nothing.
Don't worry. Give Nomura some time. He'll reference this in World of Final Fantasy 2.
Not really. Here's the thing. In fact, that allows me to mention this. Here's the thing, too. I get the feeling Kitase, Nomura, and Toriyama, and all the other guys look at this movie the same way that Iizuka looks at Sonic Boom. Where it's something that they themselves don't care for and would rather just stick to the mainline
stuff. Or like they play favorites because it's a good segue. Well, I can elaborate more in the final thoughts technically, but I can actually. I mentioned last year how Kadash so far from Advent Children showed up in Opera Omnia. There has been development for his character later on, and I can assure you, it's jaw-dropping the stuff that they did with him in terms of, in a positive manner. So again, it's more of a case of wanting to commit to have elements showing up.
Oh, sure, I understand that, though. But here's the thing: Kadash is a more proper Final Fantasy that came from the actual Japanese staff that make the games. This, on the other hand, was mostly made by Western people that had nothing to do with Final Fantasy. Yeah, Sakaguchi was technically involved, but it doesn't even show.
Wait, hold on.
I genuinely believe. Gone.
Wasn't it mainly still Square Pictures doing this? So technically this was still mainly made by Japanese folk.
And there you go, Jova. Steve Buscemi is actually the first of the team to die.
Well,
there you go.
On screen, I mean, unless
Again, don't worry, Jova. We'll see if he brings his character. Of course,
not Steve Buscemi.
Also, give Sonic Boom credit. At least the aspect of Styx survived it, whereas nothing came back from this. For comparison, that means that even Mystic Quest got referenced more than this. That is
true. But here's the thing. But that's the thing, Jova. Remember, aside from Sakaguchi writing the story and being the director, everybody else is Western. Like Nomura didn't work on this, Kitase didn't work on this, Nojima didn't work on this.
And she doesn't even try fighting it.
The other girl on the team, Jane, voiced by Perry Gilpin, she's also dead.
And the thing
like I said, Jova, the rest of the team is just this cannon fodder who gets picked up one by one.
Like, the thing is, it's like she read the script and doesn't even bother the fight. Like, at least give her an awesome scene, like shooting, blasting at it, or even maybe taking it out with her death. But no, it's just she turns off the headset and just drops the gun like she rage quit or something.
She read the script ahead of time, so she knows that it's useless to fight. No, that's the thing, Joe. Remember, like I said, Sakaguchi was the only Japanese person involved in this production. Nomura didn't work on this. Nojima didn't work on this. Kitase didn't work on this. I really get the feeling, Theo, the reason is just simple. Kitase doesn't care for this movie, most likely.
I mean, again, the fact that they care less about this than Mystic Quest, that's a death knell for me. Because Mystic Quest is one of the most despised.
There you go, Jova. There's being Reese's character.
Oh, okay. There you go.
He's giving him some time to prepare.
Not to...
Hey, my dude, why didn't you try doing that before your two friends were killed?
He didn't notice that already, it was too far because it was just the tentacles and not the big body.
God, this kind of implies that he could have maybe survived if that thing hadn't noticed him.
But apparently it's not working.
It's kind of like how think of it like, okay, how about this, Joe? Think of it like this. It's kind of like how now in today's day and age, when it comes to classic Sonic, Sega pretty much pretends that Sonic 4 didn't happen, because they never explain where in the continuity it is.
Mania doesn't reference that in the elevator.
Although to be fair, they recently released merchandise of it which references Sonic 4 Episode 2.
And there you go. Ving Rhames' character now is dead too.
Okay, so technically he was the third to die, second tops.
Within 5 minutes?
I know, right? That in the span of 5 minutes, we pick them up all one by one.
Oh my god!
That explosion looked horrible, by the way.
Oh my god, this is like the Predator.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say,
what's happening? You tell me.
I love how, as he's saying, "Look, we gotta get out of here," and his face looks bored as shit.
Oh, shoot, is the love interest about to die too?
Dwebs, get out of here. It's dangerous, Dwebs. Please, save yourself.
I guess...
I'll stay here and protect you, Dwebs.
I guess maybe points for not just having them get back together, but I question what was even the point of having them be a couple.
Well, it's for some world building, you know.
Like I said, Joe, it was very common of sci-fi movies from the late '90s, early 2000s, where they would try to get characters who have no chemistry be a couple as I guess supposed an attempt of character and emotional development.
They went back to pick him up.
There we go.
What was that movie that we saw that had Trini from the Matrix? Was it Red Planet? Yeah, because it's like, doesn't that happen as well?
I mean, at least Red Planet gave us Emmy, which I am convinced Nintendo took some inspiration from. Oh, that defeats it, I guess? The exhaust from the ship?
It doesn't really defeat him. They just run away. No.
I guess it's just the way that's shot. It makes it look like that finally took it out, but...
yeah, because of James Wood's character, the entire city is basically fucked up.
So what is there left now of human society?
Not much. I don't even know what's the point anymore.
That's pretty dour, honestly.
Well, that happened.
But don't worry, because now we're about to get it's relatively tame, but basically PG-13 rated 0G sex scene.
Not really. If I remember correctly, they just make out and that's it.
Well, again, I'll have to see. Whatever.
Maybe say something. Expressions.
No. It cost time Jova to animate the leap movement.
Yep.
We spent the budget on the hair.
Yeah, it costs money. Yeah, we spent the last of our budget on Alec Baldwin's water. We have to.
So this is a natural reaction from having all of your colleagues die, right? Horniness.
Well, some people react.
Look. I'm not kink shaming. I'm sure it turns somebody on.
Stress fucking.
So I guess considering how much above is there a new term to say something above the high mile club?
Well, I guess this is the Stratosphere Club.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well,
God.
Cut.
Pretentious piano.
Seriously, that stare lasted for so long. Stare. And then it turns.
Okay. I need somebody to edit this scene, but with Dearly Beloved. I don't know why. I just think it'd be funny.
For a moment, I thought you were gonna say Suteki Dane. Like that, wouldn't that make more sense?
And then
no, it's the piano.
And then the ultimate.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, we just see them kiss and that's it.
Okay,
and
not that effect.
And then the ultimate plot twist comes about. It turns out that the spirits had actually taken over Aki's mind, and this was all
part. What was the name of the song you said? Suteki Dane.
It's a wonderful word. I think it's called in English.
Well,
War, so.
you done
But yeah,
screwed up.
James Wood's character still survived, and instead he's also going to space because of something that he mentioned before. Also before contemplating suicide. That's charming. Because of something that he mentioned to the council, a super weapon that his team was developing, but it was vetoed to use because it's too unstable.
Basically, Dej, Suteki Dane is the love ballad that plays while Titus and Yuna are kissing.
Are drowning.
Okay.
But anyway, though, you see, the final plot twist is that the spirits had actually taken over Aki's mind, and in order to keep their host nice and docile, they planned for the massacre of Captain Edward's crew, so that this would put him in just the right state of mind to be vulnerable enough to make out with Aki, for that is truly what the spirits within her sensed that she wanted.
Also, I don't think they actually mentioned it, but, this would have been the perfect, cringe title drop by saying, "That's it, Aki, you actually had the spirits within."
Well, now she's got something else in her after that little, exercise bout.
Buzzing.
But that's the thing, though. So, they're a couple again. What does that do for the plot? I don't know, because now we're just back to this. As if they didn't have sex in Zero Gravity.
That's the thing, Joe, but it's like I said, late 90s, early 2000s syndrome. Like, this was very common in sci-fi movies at the time.
I mean, no.
Characters become a couple just cause.
I mean, I'm sorry, even with stuff like Red Planet, it felt like there was more of a purpose to the romance this. It's the fact that the story doesn't feel like it changes as a result, or that anything really is altered because of it. It just happened, and the movie moves on like it didn't. Jesus, this movie feels...
I love we're actually lampshading of the climax is probably anticlimactic.
Oh, okay, so that's why they had sex, so we could get that joke. I guess. She looks so out of it there. I thought it was going to be that, she's still dazed.
Look, she just banged. It's tiring, okay?
And yes, of course, the ship looks like a penis.
Again, quoting MST3K, sure it's phallic, why wouldn't it be?
You see, when a spaceship and a spaceport really love each other...
Hold on, Dej. So only once, and she's already exhausted? Man.
Oh, Keith David's character is still
with
alive.
everything that happened and going into space, that does a lot.
Again, the council still survived, Jova. Evacuated to the city of Houston, apparently.
Oh! Of course they'll be safe in Texas. They have all the guns needed there to protect them.
This
and again,
is definitely a problem.
The villain still gets what he wants because these are the council approving him using.
Really? So he is lucky that news of the unfortunate arrests that happened around that time did not reach the council at all, and the council are just that willing to give him the codes to this doomsday device. Because, yeah, for all intents and purposes, that seems like a doomsday device. Oh,
we are at
wait.
0.0.
So our climax is in a crater, also like 7. So yeah, I guess this is where we'll find that 8th spirit. I'll give him this though. It's different that it takes 8 instead of 7, because usually 7's the magic number of MacGuffins. Also, in case you were wondering, as I mentioned, the Caspian Mountains are, in the air, one of the roughly all the areas of the Middle East, geographically. Good job, David. You almost acted.
I'm not even kidding. I'm pretty sure by this point in the theater, I probably dozed off a couple times.
How quickly did it need for your jaw to drop, Pedro?
Simple. By the time I started eventually, basically at first the quality of the visuals for the time, of course, was the very least made the movie pretty to look at. Eventually, the boredom set in, and I was just like, "Oh my god, this has nothing to do with Final Fantasy. What the fuck is
I
this?"
just have to wonder, what kind of theater experience would this even generate from the audience? Because this, okay,
It's a great cure for insomnia, Joe. But that's why. Hey, everybody, do you have trouble sleeping? Come to theaters, and you can watch Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. If this doesn't get you sleeping, nothing will.
has there ever been a movie that's actually tried to use that to make money?
This is just a generic. It's just a generic sci-fi movie with the only thing sticking out is that it has the Final Fantasy name on it, and it's entirely done in mocap in 2001.
How about this, Shirai? You said that this was your introduction to the franchise, right? Maybe those times where you fall asleep are traumatic consequences of watching this.
I feel like I should elaborate a little bit. This was my introduction to the Final Fantasy series. That introduction being my mother putting this on for her children as background noise.
I'm
So whether I paid attention or not, that is up for debate.
if my mom put this on for me as a kid, I would stop talking to her. I will cut
My mom got us good times.
Christ.
Listen, my mother got us good time movies, Pedro. This was at least better.
I know.
Wow.
Deji, allow me to introduce you to this concept called humor. It's this thing where you exaggerate reality to create a humorous effect. Okay?
So,
Jesus
I
Christ,
mean...
man.
That sounded way too convincing for a joke.
Also-
Sorry.
The A Spirit has been destroyed? What the fuck?
But yeah, it seems that Zeus is actually working for now.
Zeus is
to
the-
the disadvantage of our heroes.
Zeus is the name of the super secret cannon weapon.
The laser piece cannon, yes. Hey, I can say that because the color is yellow.
So,
No,
Tio,
but,
is that what you meant about the cop-out with the A Spirit, that it just gets destroyed all willy-nilly like that?
Yeah, yes, but there's a twist onto that. It's still a cop, although.
Oh, let me guess. Aki herself is the A Spirit.
I can definitely see this as a good thing for me to do if I can't sleep for whatever reason. I just put this movie on and I'm like, ugh, sleep is the only way to escape this boring piece of shit.
You probably noticed that already, but this Final Fantasy movie did not have much of the heroes fighting the monsters. It didn't. It had only occasionally a bit at the beginning, a bit during the escape, but not much in something in terms of boss fights. And now there's not even an equivalent of a final boss.
I'm curious, was a video game adaptation planned for this thing?
As far as we know, no.
No.
Maybe in early stages when this was conceptualized, maybe when they thought we could have still, done it in a decent enough time, but no, not really.
So now what?
Which is interesting because back then, pretty much every blockbuster had a tie-in video game.
Well, I guess we can't really call this a blockbuster. Well, I mean, I guess it did bust them at the box office in one way.
It busted their blocks.
But in the case of Alec Baldwin, busted a nut.
Did they record that line while Donald Sutherland was asleep?
I feel like you could say that for almost any actor who's not James Wood in this movie.
Oh,
Please do not think that I am being possessed, despite the fact that I'm speaking in such robotic a tone.
Did they record this? Did they record the
Hold
table read for this?
What do you think you've been fighting, moron? You literally have seen firsthand what they can do.
okay. You fucking idiot. Like, what reason would she even have to lie to you about this?
He's evil, Pedro.
He's literally just using mental gymnastic to justify his actions, Pedro.
I know, but even within madness, there's usually a method. This
Okay.
guy's just being an idiot for the sake of being an idiot.
Pedro, he has a very tiny penis and wants to fire the giant cannon to compensate.
No,
Okay?
guys, remember, his wife and daughter were killed in San Francisco.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say the wife. I thought you were gonna say his wife and children left him for a second.
Look, if he has a tiny penis, there's prostitutes for that. If you can't get a woman that likes to get just do something else than just be an idiot and destroy the world.
But okay. His mentality.
And here's the thing. Virtually now, General Hein is inapproachable. The Phantoms cannot reach him. Aki Ross cannot reach him. So the logical question is, how is he going to be defeated? Because obviously he needs to be defeated, right? Once again, his own stupidity. The cannon firing again and again is overheating, but he will keep just doing it until it explodes under his feet. So.
Oh my god,
Brilliant.
idiot! Wait for it to cool down. You're out in space.
Even Fantasy VII, the game you are actually taking inspiration from, had the Sister Ray needing a cooldown mechanic, and fucking Heidegger and Scarlet telling Hojo to stop overheating it.
Like, why?
No shit, Alec Baldwin.
Like, that's the problem, though. Yes, our villain is in a bout where he is in such an overpowered position
Hey, we found Holy.
that he has to defeat himself. You don't say.
That was definitely not a good line.
Yeah.
The delivery in this movie.
Actually, I haven't checked. Was this ever nominated for a Razzie? Let me see.
Did Sakaguchi do the voice direction as well? Because that seems to be a problem when Japanese people direct English voice actors.
Like, look, I'm gonna give Adventure 2 credit. At least the characters sounded alive. Again, anyone who's not...
Except Knuckles.
Alright,
Sometimes they sounded a bit too alive.
But the thing is, anyone who's not James Woods in this movie literally sounds like they're being possessed to make them sound like a drone.
Maybe James Woods is right.
Okay, the Razzies, surprisingly enough, did not touch this movie for some reason, but it was nominated at the Stinkers for worst screenplay for a film grossing more than 100 million worldwide using Hollywood math.
Oh.
But it did not win.
That's a very specific award.
I know, right? There's also something that I forgot to mention. In terms of legacy, in terms of inspiring, apparently this movie inspired, of all people, BioWare. Someone mentioned Mass Effect.
That's why I said Mass Effect earlier.
Someone mentioned Mass Effect beforehand. That's because BioWare took inspiration from some of the designs of the guns and technology of these to construct stuff for Mass Effect. Which, fair enough. At least they bothered to build something with that.
Okay, to be fair to the Razzies, 2001 was also the year we saw Freddy Got Fingered.
Okay,
oh,
fair
yeah,
enough.
okay,
that literally trounced everything.
They're deads. That movie can't hurt you anymore.
Again, and consider the Razzies closest thing into touching video game adaptation was just nominating Uwe Boll
Plus,
stuff and not even read recurringly. I get the idea they didn't completely ignore it.
So anyway, speaking of the money of this movie, this was actually the most expensive video game-inspired film until the release of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time in 2010.
Like I said, for 2001, 130 something, I think it was 137. No, 137 million was a fuck ton. Just for comparison, in 2003, Universal wasted 120, I think, million 2 times, one for Ang Lee's Hulk and one for The Cat in the Hat. Both of them critical, if I recall correctly, not really that commercial successful in terms of commercials, And again, Universal wasted all the money. So imagine this, 137. But yeah, now it's time for the cop-out.
Oh, great. And now we have frame rate and blurriness problems.
Again, I'm usually a kind of a fan of these sci-fi products that inject mysticism, having fate, and the unknown. But again,
Oh my god, this environment actually kind of looks like a Final Fantasy environment.
Yeah.
Kind of.
we're almost Jova. It's like what you said about.
Ah!
It's like what you said about Advent Children, Jova. It's that kind of bad video game adaptation that teases you about the good stuff, and you get like a glimpse at the very end. Of what
I
could be.
know, right?
It's the surfing Dracula meme.
Yep.
Surfing Dracula. Is that a reference to Captain N?
Someone on Twitter made essentially a meme that serves to satirize what a lot of new series are, in saying that reboots of old series focuses too much on either an origin or talking about something else, and only in the last couple of snippets of the last episode you get a glimpse of what the original was in terms of coolness.
And that's mainly because of the dawn of streaming shows.
Okay, I'll be honest. I don't know who's the worst actor in the movie, Ming Na or Donald Sutherland.
I'm gonna say Alec Baldwin.
And the thing is, yes, nobody's giving their A game but Ming. You were great as Mulan. What are you doing here?
Like I
To be
said,
fair-
bad voice direction. Let me see if I'm
Yeah, bad voice direction. But then
Jova, you could get fucking Meryl Streep in here. Like, do you really think she would be able to properly make this?
Maybe
script look
everyone
like
was
ours?
legit just bored.
Well, then the question is, how did James Woods succeed while where everyone else failed? Did
I
he
get the
just
feeling
ignore
James
what the
Woods didn't
voice
actually-
director said?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that's what happened.
Isn't it just a Michael Sheen in Twilight situation?
I
Not
wonder.
quite, but
Well, I do wonder, though, because James Woods was probably one of the bigger names in
Well-
this movie at the time.
Well, I should remind you, Shira, remember, the whole thing with Michael Sheen going way off script for the ha-ha thing, that was my theory, because we don't actually know that was what happened.
But it definitely has that energy.
Oh, no, I still fully believe that was not in the script, and that Michael Sheen probably went all like, guys, I'm going to see when they stop me. I'll bet you anything they don't.
I'll blast you all. I'll blast you all to hell. Like, I mean, I get it. We're supposed to feel the rage that this guy feels for being killed his wife and daughter. So why do I feel
Nah.
nothing?
Because the movie didn't show a proper flashback to showcase what he lost. We don't know what he lost. We got told what he lost, but we didn't see it. We didn't experience it. So
You
we
know
can
what?
empathize with the character.
You know what? I'm going to go a step further. Maybe even if they didn't have a flashback, they could have maybe have worked better if we saw just, more scenes of him grieving, reflecting
And
on
there
what
you
he's
go.
lost.
The villain literally blows himself out with his own stupidity.
Wow.
He could not
It
wait
must be
5
done.
minutes for cooling off.
Basically. Look at it this way, Jova. Like, why do you think in Avatar: The Last Airbender we have all those flashbacks that Aang has
He's
back to
still
when
firing.
Yeah, basically. Think of it like this, Jova. Why do you think in Avatar: The Last Airbender we have all those flashbacks where Aang flashes back to when he wasn't the last air nomad? So that way we can see how we empathize with his pain of losing his civilization. So.
Yeah, what I mean is, he is still alive. Jesus
And
Christ.
he's trying to do it still.
Jova, the Lord of the Dead can't be killed. He's the Lord of the Dead. I mean...
And there you go. James Woods is dead from his own stupidity.
And the last
He had a
scene,
tiny penis.
and the last scene we see of him isn't even a look of terror, just a confused look more than
He
anything.
doesn't even have a last phrase like say, "Oh no," or something like that.
You could have had him say something like, "That's not a problem, is it?"
I mean, why even have a villain if he has to self-defeat himself like that? All this guy did was legit just make things worse at every step of the way.
Remind me, is Alec Baldwin still alive?
Yes,
Last we
for
checked.
now.
Okay, because I have a good line to say about when we see him again.
Alright, yeah, the best thing of the movie's gone, and there's still a movie left to go.
Brilliant.
Frankly, you were mentioning about connecting, but referencing James Root's roles as 80s. I'm more reminded of the introductory cutscene of Auron in 2, where 80s is pissed off and says, "I'm the Lord of the Dead," and Auron is like, "Yeah, no wonder no one wants to die."
Yeah, basically.
Love that bit. Don't leave me, Gray. Otherwise, you won't be able to hear my
Care
angelic
about
voice.
these people, Jova. Care about them.
No.
Maybe I'll
Make
care
me.
about. Maybe I'll care.
You with a sticky door to carry.
Maybe I'll care about them when they sound like they care. Jesus, woman, you're literally surrounded at what might be the last moment of your life, and you still can't
Jova.
raise an octave.
Okay, Jova and Whips. It's time for the final verdict. What Square product has worst voice acting? This or Life is Strange Before the Storm?
That's tough, but yeah, I'm gonna say this. Like, at least Life is Strange Before the Storm could occasionally get wacky over the top. This
Plus, that had the excuse of not being able to get like almost any of its voice actors from the other game because of the strike.
Yeah.
This didn't have that excuse. It's actually managed to have top tier talents, and yet, aside from James Woods, no one bothered.
Oh, and by the way, Aki, and by the way, Aki, you'll be dead if you go in there. That's not a problem, is it?
So yeah,
Death
Alec
isn't the
Baldwin is
end.
doing the heroic sacrifice in order for the mission to succeed. Because yes, again, Jova, you were pretty much correct. Aki herself is the last spirit within.
But now he'll become that spirit that she can use. How?
I love you, wife.
The music is trying to be so extra.
Yeah, it's like Ellie Goldenfall's doing the acting.
Oh my god, something that actually looks mystical.
Too little,
I
too
must
late.
go now. My planet needs me.
And now I look like Dr. Manhattan.
And this is how Alec Baldwin reincarnates as a baby.
Oh no!
Oh no! Oh, oh wow!
I'd probably rather watch the Boss Baby than this.
No, I will watch for this over Boss Baby. I'm sorry.
At least I don't have to look at baby butt.
I mean, I'm gonna have to side. I hate to say it, I have to side with Dedge on this. At least Boss Baby had more entertainment value than this. Like I said, there's like no plot to keep things connected. And maybe if they went like Expendables and made it so that for the lack of plot, there's a ton of cool action sequences.
Sky being drove up.
Of course. But even the action sequences are lackluster and lame.
Also, okay. I know that blasting zone from Squall has an effect of the blade going into space before crumbling down, but not to this effect.
So what did that do? Did that just blast all the spirits off of Earth now?
It purified them because, the merging of the 8 spirits into the core that was Gaia essentially purified, everything, and now the ghosts of the being are free to actually, pass on.
So this implies that they could have just gotten any old spirit and just used that instead of having
those were specific because, Dr. Sid and Aki Ross were tracking them down with the device that you saw at the beginning.
So then how does, Alec Baldwin get to be the 8th spirit then? What specific...
Look, crystals!
Yeah.
Final Fantasy, see?
It serves as a connection. He literally attaching himself to Aki. He literally connects her spirit towards, the mass that was, absorbing him.
That sounds immensely contrived.
Well, that's because it is, Joe. Remember, their plan when going down was like, let's gather all the 8 spirits there and see what happens.
They're still trying to make us feel sad about this.
Oh yeah,
You're not
he's
cheering?
dead.
How dare you?
Die already.
That's what it's called.
Hurry it up.
Now you're the one poking with a stick and saying, "Why don't you die already?"
Sure, he woke up today and chose violence, I see.
Peace was never an option, Drova.
But guys, the sun, it rises.
Yeah, the dawn is beautiful.
And oh yeah, of course, the bird has found hope
Okay,
now,
again,
I guess.
to be fair, you remember one of the iconic image of Final Fantasy is the shot of the dove, the storm of doves moving on.
But that's not a
horizon.
dove. That's a
No,
hawk.
and it's just one. That's because Jova, this is American, don't you know?
Well, hold on, hon. If it's America, shouldn't you do something like the bald eagle?
That's an eagle, Jova. That's the same thing.
Good God! Can this movie?
There are different types of eagles.
What is wrong with this movie? I just don't get it. How do you
Everything.
have this much money and yet get so much wrong?
Also, I don't remember if the songs for the credits are, exclusive for the movie or they just licensed a bunch of them. Nor I particularly care.
Joe, allow me to introduce you to this filmmaker named James Cameron, where he wastes millions of dollars just to talk about how the Earth is in danger.
I mean, from what I've heard, Avatar: The Way of Water is actually good, and look, despite what issues his films have, they at least feel like they're up to
I'm much
something.
more interested in the mythos and the ecosystem of Pandora than in this.
I agree. But
yeah. Movie's over, and I don't think there's a post-credit scene, so Aki will not be invited to the Dissidia initiative, unfortunately.
Hey, look.
She doesn't even have a weapon. What can you make her fight with?
A gun.
But look, guys, we end on a lyrical tune. It's totally Final Fantasy, right?
Well, who knows, Joe? Maybe Square can collaborate with BioWare to make a game out of this.
Casting and voice director Jack Fletcher, whoever that is.
I mean, to be fair, that's the only chance this material has to actually, expand.
Jova, that's actually Jack Fletcher has been the voice director of a lot of Final Fantasy games, starting with the year this came out.
Yeah.
Huh.
So again, it checks out what I imagine. Remember, Square for a long time, including the early PS2 games, had bad voice directors. It wasn't until Kingdom Hearts where they started to improve, because probably they had someone from Disney actually coaching people instead of them.
That's most likely what happened, because when you look at the voice direction in 10 to the voice direction in Kingdom Hearts 1, it's like night and day.
Also, try to listen again to the bouncer for a laugh.
Well, the bouncer has the excuse it was still back in that era where that kind of voice acting was just the usual.
That's what I mean.
I've got to.
But yeah, that's it. That's the spirits within. Aren't you enlightened, guys?
I'm enlightened on why this movie was such a failure, because great.
What have we learned from this movie?
Well, I've learned that I really, really hope that this wasn't someone's first time they've... I really hope this wasn't someone's first movie that starred either Ming-Na or Donald Sutherland, because they would have come off with a really horrible first impression. But then again, they could have said that of almost any of the actors aside from James Woods. Because, Jesus, the acting in this movie, James Woods aside, is really listless and with no emotion behind any of it. Like it sounds like they recorded the table read for the movie and just put the audio from that on the screen. Which also explains why the lip syncing is so bad in this movie as well. The effects are okay by 2001 standards. They're not bad, but it's of course these movies are going to age badly within barely a few years of its release.
Dweebs,
yeah.
To answer your question about at least Ming-Na, I want to remind you she was Chun-Li in the Street Fighter movie, for an example.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, but you mentioned about theatrical and stuff, but go on.
Yeah, I was like, no, I mean, if this is the first time anyone has seen her in a movie.
Well, there was also the Hong Kong '97 movie. So
wait, she was in that?
Well,
not the video game.
Remember, the movie is not based on the video game. Thankfully.
Oh, okay. I was about to say Hong Kong '97 got a movie adaptation.
Wait. What are you? But guys, what are you talking about? I want to see.
I heard of ugly fucking Reds.
Yeah, I want to. What are you talking about, guys? I want to see. Ming-Na and Robert Patrick fight Tong Xiaoping's severed head.
The bald head of Tong Xiaoping. Oh.
Yeah, why not? um, but yeah, but going back to this, the story. What story?
Yeah.
It's like the most we get is just a bunch of people fighting ghosts, and James Woods is the villain because the movie said so. And he blows himself up because he's stupid. So the bad guys didn't, the good guys didn't even beat him. He beat himself.
Yeah, because he has a tiny penis.
No, guys, it's because his wife and daughter are dead. They died in San Francisco. He took the time to explain that in front of his entire squadron of soldiers, so you should respect that.
I think all the time people, mention about revenge being pointless, this is the thing they're thinking of.
And the music was solid, at least. I mean, yeah, I've definitely heard better from Elliot Goldenfall, but I mean, this is probably the only other thing in the movie that had any semblance of life in it, aside from James Woods. So, props to that, I guess.
Maybe the spirits had actually taken their souls long ago, and all that was left were just the husks.
Maybe the real spirits within were the ones we befriended along the way.
Yeah, the real spirits within were the ones that were eaten along the way.
Nom.
Well, I mean, he did say the spirits within. He didn't say what. Didn't say what the spirits are within. But yeah, but what we know now, the spirits are within those monsters' bellies.
What a deep and introspective title.
Speaking of which, Dweebs, what do you think of Alec Baldwin's teammates, the one that gets picked up one by one?
Yes, the teammates with such defining characteristics as guy,
Yes.
other guy,
Cool guy,
female assistant, and suit.
Actually,
Yes.
I think it was legit just Steve Buscemi. I can't even remember the actress's name, but
Ving
Ving
Rhames.
Rhames.
no. Actress's name. Like, I remember
Yes, it was
Ving
Ving
Rhames.
Rhames.
No. I said
I-
I said actress, not actor. Oh God! Unless Ving Rhames is the waifu of this movie, after all.
Alright, but really, there's not much else to say. This is a really listless and boring movie. Yeah, and no wonder people rather went to see Cats and Dogs instead.
Yeah.
Or even Jurassic Park 3. Like, that
Yeah,
movie-
even Jurassic
that-
Park 3.
That movie is bad, but I can see why people would go to see that instead of this.
I hate to say it. I get more entertainment
Yeah,
out
I
of
mean,
that
this-
movie than this one, and I hate
This
Jurassic
movie-
Park 3.
This movie appeals to nobody. It doesn't appeal to Final Fantasy fans because it has barely anything to do with it aside from the title. And people who aren't fans of Final Fantasy are going to see it because the movie's boring.
But what about sci-fi fans?
I would say they had Star Trek at this point, but by 2001, the momentum that the franchise at that point was like screeching to a halt. Like Enterprise had only just Voyager had only just ended at the time this movie came out, and Enterprise was barely just getting started at that point. And the movies were they were still stinking from Insurrection, and Nemesis was coming up.
Ooh.
Yikes.
Yeah, but that's about it. The early 2000s were pretty mixed for sci-fi fans.
Again, in general, Dweebs, if you forgot, it generally stated that this was basically at the climax of that period of time from the mid-90s to until 2000, early 2000, 2001, roughly. Like, this was at the cusp of that.
Yeah. So there you are. That's it. Final Fantasy: The Spirits of It is boring, and in terms of movies that were directed by the video game series creator, as bad as Wing Commander was, it was at least not boring. So there you go, Chris Roberts. You made a better movie than Hironobu Sakaguchi.
Actually, that's a good question before we go to the next person. Pedro, since you have more experience with the game series than any one of us, because I forgot since it's been a long time since we did the commentary, does the Wing Commander movie have more things in common with its games than this has to
Yes.
with Final Fantasy?
Well, see, the thing about the Wing Commander movie is that it technically has elements from the games. The problem is the way it executes them. Like, for example, the Space Tigers, the Kilrathi, they look very different than they do in the games for some reason. They take characters that, for example, they have a character that's been altered by Mark Hamill, right? And they cast him as Freddie Prinze Jr. in the movie, even though those two actors could not be even more remotely different. Technically they do follow stuff from the games, but just in a checklist manner. Which is weird because Chris Roberts directed that. You'd think he would know how to do this shit, but
All right, Shiroi, what have we learned from this movie?
I learned that now I have a great way to cure my insomnia.
Actually, you're not far off. I am a fairly bit more tired now than I was earlier. So,
It's not even good for that.
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward. Just pretty generic in the bad way. I don't know. There's nothing really Final Fantasy about it. As a little experience as I have with that series, I can feel comfortable saying that, at least.
Well, you've already gone through a handful of Final Fantasies with us, so you already know enough by this point.
No one sounds like they want to be there, aside from James Woods. Couldn't really care about any of the characters. The music's okay. The movie looks good. But I'm just so not invested in this story or the characters themselves at all. I think that's it. This was just a drag.
All right then, Dej, what do you think we learned?
Well, I learned that, man, Square cannot make a good video game adaptation. Because I saw this, Advent Children, and that Dragon Quest movie.
Oh, your story.
That movie was enjoyable until the ending that just basically shat on everything.
Yeah. Don't even get me started.
I know this has been a debate since I want to say post 7, but what exactly makes a Final Fantasy thing Final Fantasy? But this feels like the only time where you can say this is too detached from the IP, that it could have been literally anything else.
And again, it's so easy to tie stuff to Final Fantasy. Like, it's not even like the rules are super strict. Like, you can go from something as typical as a medieval setting to, like, a high-tech futuristic setting, and they can still be in the same series. But nope, not with this one.
Even if, because this came out in 2001, so Final Fantasy 7 was what, 5 years prior to this?
4.
Yes.
4 years.
4. Yeah, 4.
Yeah,
4.
4 years prior to this, so they already established the steampunk futuristic vibe for the franchise.
6,
Yeah, 6. Technically, 6 was the one that kind of started going in that direction.
You can argue the seeds were planted with 1 and 5 already at 4 and 5 already had something going on, but 6 was the one that spearheaded a bit more.
Although, to be fair, 7 was the one that went full-on techno, whereas 6 was more steampunk.
It also revolutionized by not having, the Empire, but instead having a corporation as the villain. So there is that. Go on there, Joe.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where, man, what happened here?
And keep in mind, Dids, this not only definitely killed Square Productions, this almost killed Square Enix. It took the merging with Enix and the immense success of Final Fantasy X, again, time is a flat circle, for them to get back on their feet after this movie's failure.
I feel like making a Final Fantasy adaptation should be a easy home run.
Yep.
But they keep missing.
Yeah, they keep flopping. Again, I don't know if you've seen it, but Lost Order, which is a small OVA that talks about the Nibelheim accident of Final Fantasy VII, not even that one can manage to keep a consistent, adaptation straight, because they changed the way Sephiroth dies.
Yeah.
And wanted to.
I don't even get why they did it. Sephiroth should not want to die at that point, but you know what? Might as well save that rant for when we actually cover that one.
The characters are so one note, or calling them one note feels too
Generals.
yeah.
They're
Because the only
nothing.
character that feels to have a personality is. I was going to say Helical. I mean, James Woods' character.
Okay, fair enough.
But even then, he's still lame.
Oh yeah, he is still one note. It's just that, in this case, being one note is what raises him above pretty much 99% of the cast in this thing.
And I know that no one at Square wants to acknowledge this, but I feel like there are some elements or plot beats that you can steal and revamp it into your own thing.
Like I said, I think Square, similar to Adventure, did Sony re-release these in 4K recently.
And again, hey, Life is Strange seems to insist that this is one of the greatest movies of all
do you
kind.
mind telling me what was the actual quote?
Allow me.
Go on, Pedro.
That is a tasty plasma. Oh, maybe I can come sneak in and watch Final Fantasy Spirits Within. I don't care what anybody says. That's one of the best sci-fi films ever made.
Yeah, Miss Caulfield, I'm sorry, but your taste in movies is not really great. Sorry.
Or maybe it was a Square Enix exact thing. Put it in. I'm still mad. I'm not coping. I'm not on.
I like the Shiroi's reaction to that line in the commentary. Honey, put that on Twitter. See how that goes for you.
Did Twitter have a problem with Spirits Within?
No. But to be fair, I can see what everything that Shir will say, because recently Twitter sport is to take popular opinion and going full contrarian mode on it.
God.
See the Flash.
Would they truly have the capacity to claim that, Spirits Within is actually genius?
An underrated gem, don't you know?
I mean, people like Alita, so, just...
Hey, did you know that romance was never a plot point in Star Wars?
Alright, anyway, back to your thoughts.
I'll leave my anime opinions to myself.
But yeah, this movie sucked. Only saving grace was watching it with you guys. But now I feel like, since I've already seen almost all the Square Enix movies, I have to finish it off with Kingsglaive.
Alright.
So, what score are you giving, just out of curiosity, Daj?
2.
Fair enough. John,
Honestly, that seems generous.
What did we learn today?
Well, we learned that it is indeed possible to waste over 90 minutes of one's time. I'll be honest, there is almost nothing of value. Now, it keeps us out of being Life is Strange 2 level of not caring is, well, first and foremost, James Woods, God bless him. He, his acting, at the very least, God bless his acting. The actual guy, screw him. But no, he is the one person here who, if there was bad voice direction, just ignored it or ad-libbed his lines to actually give some semblance of a character. Because, man, this feels like one of the most nothing products ever. Ignoring the fact that it has little to no connection with the series it dares use the name of, it barely feels like anything happens in this. Most of the gathering of the spirits was done before the movie even starts. Just think about that. For a series that is famous about going on quests to, find MacGuffins across the world and whatnot, over 80% of them are already found by the start of the movie. And, like, getting the 7th one is tough enough, and then there's the whole cop-out with the 8th one, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that happened. Like, not only does this movie fail to capture aspects of Final Fantasy, it feels like at times it rebels against them. And, man, what a mess it produces. You have all these talented actors here, and they all sound like they are half dead with how monotone they are. We have moments that are supposed to be big dramatic bouts, which hit with the force of a wet, soggy towel. Actually, no, even a wet, soggy towel can be used as a whip occasionally. It's a wet noodle at best. Jesus. The motivations of the characters are weak. The visuals are definitely, well, back then anyway, were definitely the saving grace, because, yeah, for the time it came out, they looked great, but now that they've aged, well, what is there left to this movie? Well, Aki's hair is well rendered. Oh, good lord. But seriously, I don't feel like much really happened. It's just, because the thing is, sure, yeah, the spirits supposedly are placated, but when we leave the movie, the world is still wrecked. Like, we don't see the after effects to show what they succeeded, so...
We do know that there are other city hives, so humanity will survive overall, but it was just New York who got fucked. Sorry, Jova.
I guess the thing is, though, is like, well, the ending visual is still on the world being wrecked, so... For a viewer, it doesn't even give necessarily the impression that we save the world. Like, sure, yeah, implied or spoken, but, you know, as the old saying goes, show, don't tell. And that's a thing this movie likes to do a lot, is tell. Special mention goes to, again, the bit where James Woods regales his sad story of how his wife and daughter died in San Francisco, and that is why he has to do what he does. Even shows them the postcard and picture of them to the faceless goons. And the council are idiots. They easily trust the obvious bad guy, and again, he is just lucky, absolutely lucky, that the fact that he arrested the team working on the wall beforehand didn't get to him, and his death doesn't even feel that satisfying, because he literally just does himself in it, and it's not even like a cool hoist by his own petard moment. No, it is legit just the villain being an idiot. As far as we know, he'll be seen as a hero in the end. Good grief.
Throughout the entire movie, no members of these teams ever say to him no. Apparently, he has this unquestionable charisma or threatening aura, and nobody actually wants to contradict him.
And, like, we don't know enough to justify this. We don't know a lot about anything, which is the biggest problem. For a Final Fantasy product, I think I do not say this lightly, this actually has worse world building than Final Fantasy XIII's entire trilogy.
Again, Jova, if you want your headcanon, you can say that this is the future of a world Lightning created, because that was supposed to be Earth.
Now, again, I hesitate to call this the worst thing Final Fantasy has ever done, because the 13 trilogy still does hold a good candle there, but I have to give the 13 trilogy...
that one remember in some capacity to be a Final Fantasy game.
Exactly! It remembered to be a Final Fantasy game. We eventually did get the lore proper. I mean, it was terribly told, but at least it was there. This is nothing, and with so little of nothing, there's very little reason to give a crap about anything. Like, again... It's like they knew, and that's why they gave it the Final Fantasy name. And yeah, I can see how that would definitely rub fans the wrong way. Jesus Christ. What a travesty of a movie. And again, it was such a travesty that Square got hit bad by it. It took Final Fantasy X and Enix to save them. Which, yeah, I mean... And yes, this has happened again and again, But I have to wonder, was this the worst that they got bashed? You know, in the wallet?
No,
Because
technically speaking, remember, on a technical level, the situation where they were in before Final Fantasy was technically worse. Because back then they were technically a much smaller studio, you know, and with not much of a, money, threshold to work with. So when they did King's Knight, they were literally had no idea what they were doing, like a bunch of chickens without a head, and they genuinely believed they were going to essentially were allowed to just do one more game and declare bankruptcy.
wow. So, remind me, what was the big?
He's legendary for a reason.
Yeah. So King's Knight was the product that landed them in that trouble in the first place.
No, but it was a combination of things. But King's Knight was one of the culprits. It was among their product. It was one of the games that they had not really, an idea what to do with it, and was not as successful as they wanted it to be. Recently, they tried to make it into a gacha.
Oh God, Jesus. But yeah, no, it's easy to see how this project caused so much damage. And the thing that's frustrating is, it took resources from way more creative properties, way more promising stuff, and it feels like most of the load was blown on making it pretty and trying to tout the new concept of the artificial actress, because, like, what was the... Well, I guess I can get the purpose, but what was the methodology behind the writing of this? Because, no, this just feels lame. Like,
let me tell you what I suspect drove them. Sakaguchi had a much complex plot in mind, probably, something that involved a more detailed chasing of these elements and exploration of the world. But because of the limitation imposed by the time constraints, the animation, and the fact that he had, subcontracted the script to two people with not much experience and not with the type of source material he's used to work with, that's what we got. That's why we got this.
That could be it, because the one connecting aspect seems to be that the animation must have been balls to the wall expensive for the time. So I could see that being the big limiting factor. And what a shame, too, because... Oh, God. This is a travesty. And, like, having children ain't exactly great, but it is leagues beyond this movie. Leagues. And for anyone who's seen our commentary of it, you may know we aren't exactly the biggest fans of it either, so coming from this channel, yeah, that just puts into perspective how bad this movie is. And that's really all I can
children
just...
had fight scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like...
Advent Children as people with different weapons and personalities.
Like, at best we see, like, the corporal woman shoot a spirit that manages to blow it up. Otherwise, these fight scenes are massacres on the human side. Not good. Not good. The best way to describe this movie, it is a black hole of boredom and bad quality.
Pedro, what have we learned today?
Allow me to recite to describe what we learned by enunciating this satire of another movie that I've prepared. So, taking a beloved franchise, depriving it of all of its elements, and putting it in a generic sci-fi setting that nobody is going to give a shit about. Is there a downside to this? Okay, Sakaguchi, you do it. We put the Final Fantasy name on it, and we sell. Oh, you know what slipped my mind? The company's gonna nearly die from this. That's not a problem, is it? There you go. The plot sucks. The characters are bland as shit. The dialogue is terrible, and the animation aged badly. I don't even care much for the music, to be honest with you.
All right, there was music in this.
It's literally white. Normally, I don't go for the white noise thing like Edge does, but this is literally white noise. That's all it is. It's white noise. The movie. it's hard to even describe it because this feels like an amalgamation of every trope of sci-fi movies at the time, and not even done particularly well. So, yeah, and yeah, it has nothing to do with Final Fantasy. This thing could have literally been passed for an original thing made by different people, and I have no fucking idea what the hell Sakaguchi was thinking. Like, if he wasn't going to actually properly helm this movie by writing the script himself, then what the fuck was the point of even starting this project? If you don't want, like, if anything, you might have wanted to just give this movie out to somebody else. Give it to Kitase. He's the one who actually is a film school graduate. If anything, it should have been him making this movie, not
Because
Sakaguchi.
he's like, it should have been me, not him. It's not fair.
Yeah, basically. That's it, really. It should have been Kitase because Sakaguchi is a good writer, but he's not a filmmaker, whereas Kitase is actually a film school graduate. So if anything, we should have had Kitase handle this movie. Yeah, basically. There's not much to say. It's a piece of shit that nobody brings up nowadays anyway because what's the point? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
But
Okay,
hey,
of
Pedro,
course.
I'm sure Sakaguchi after this will become a very talented writer for its own original stories.
Oh yeah.
And I'm half joking because again, I heard both the last story and the other Xbox
Lost Odyssey.
Lost
Lost
Odyssey
Odyssey.
actually do have good plots.
Lost Odyssey is
that,
great. Last Story is fine, but not. I will argue it's not.
Not as much. Okay, good to know. All right, what have I learned today? I learned that James Woods is a tiny penis. No, I'm not that.
I mean, yeah, you could just look at his Twitter to confirm that.
Good. All right. Again, it has been said that this has almost nothing to do with Final Fantasy. So let's try to look at it in its own way. It still has problems because it establishes, as Joe said, it establishes a lot that has already happened. We jump basically like at this. We start at the second third of what is supposed to be the story, and as such we need exposition dumps to fill in the gaps, which is horrible at that too, especially not conveyed well by the acting. We don't get enough world building to actually care about this location or the characters that inhabit them, As a result, there is nothing that you're led to care. I made a point in mentioning Final Fantasy VIII how, constructing your fictional world for RPG is very important, and how much, pleasant it might be for the viewer, the player, or in this case the viewer, to actually be immersed by it, being incentivized to explore it, like Ivalice from 12 and the Tactics games, the Gaia from 7, for example. And while some worlds like, the world of 8 did not have that kind of spark, they were still miles ahead of this. Who thought it was a good idea to have a movie based on Final Fantasy be set up on a post-apocalyptic Earth? Be creative, call it something else, Sure, there is the Gaia thing, but it seems that the movie is trying to go with the idea of Gaia, the meteorite, the fantasy element, impacting on Earth in the real world and changing the result. Ironically enough, during the PS2 era, Yoko Taro will use this as a joke for one of the endings of the first Drakengard, and then it will develop for it to be the first Nier.
Dang.
So, hilarious that. But again, conceptually, this is not working. One of the more recently used in Karadidi mentions the importance of the conceptualization of story. Some stories, just need to be told because it's something that everybody expects. Some stories, are just too good to be ignored, or because the fans actually want to see these things to happen. Or some stories, necessitate to be told for plot elements to actually, move forward. This has none of these three conditions. Nobody wanted this story. Nobody was, expecting this kind of story, and this was not necessary whatsoever. It's horrible, and a squandering of potential that showcase will ultimately impact Squaresoft forever. To the point that to this day, some people still genuinely believe that Square technically died before the merging and never recovered. Like,
Damn.
Some people unfortunately never recovered from the events of this movie. Sure, you can argue that it's going too far on that level, but part of me does understand because again, maybe it's not as understandable now because 20 years have passed. Yeah, but this really did have an impact, and yes, it was ignored by things like the Razzies, at the time. But I can tell you that this was just that kind of magnitude, and I have no idea. Like I said at the beginning of Advent Children, I have no idea what convinced Square to try again with the CG animated movies. By all laws of account and everything, this should have been their warning sign to say, "Don't try this anymore whatsoever." My only guessing is that Kitase and Nomura were like, well, okay, Sakaguchi tried with a bunch of Western people. Let's try to do things in house and see what we can come up with. Maybe it's that. I don't know.
I think I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was munching off of Final Fantasy VII Mania, which was big at the time.
Yeah, maybe that too. And again, as King and Slave showcased instead, ultimately, with Square now is actually reaching the point of actually making a movie with a more solid story, but actually more pleasant to look at, remembers what colors are supposed to be, and actually with good music too. Because the music in this movie, I agree with Pedro. It's more at best forgettable. It's not technically bad. I heard worse, but not good overall. And like I said, why not having Nobuo Uematsu? Why forcing these Western people into a development team that should have been mostly Japanese? Like, I don't understand this. I will never understand this.
So actually, I can probably explain this.
Go on.
I noticed a trend that a lot of people who work in the gaming industry really want to break into Hollywood and try to make movies.
Not worth it.
So it's just one of those things. Maybe he was also a victim of wanting to do that as well.
Great. Another person we want
I can
to be
see
the
it.
next Spielberg. Anyway, again, this is just bad. Nothing more than that. The acting is so insipid. I still stand on my point that Aki Ross can be potentially salvageable as a good, interesting character if they actually bothered to make her show up in crossovers. Just to mention quickly, because it would be a very long explanation, and it requires people to know the events of Dirge Cerberus, so it's a bit complicated. What they did with Kadaj in Opera Omnia is nothing short of a miracle, because it does start with with exactly what we think of, his constant whining about wanting to see Mother. Like I said last year, at the beginning, he's actually teaming up with Cloud because he believes Sephiroth is, not the Sephiroth that shows up in Dissidia is not the one that he's supposed to reincarnate with so as he's hostile. But by the time instead Vice from Dirge Cerberus shows up, he gets convinced to join up again with Sephiroth with the promise of, if we end the world, you're gonna see your mother. But taking a lot of patience and understanding from characters from the Seven Mythos, including for example Aerith, Kadaj actually gets to have character development, stops whining, and says, "Yes, I will now start to live for myself and not for my own dreams." Again, I would have never dreamed of a character like Kadaj having to say something like that and added kind of character evolution. So yes, believe me when I tell you, I think even someone like Aki can genuinely improve under these conditions. But unfortunately, because this movie is so sterile in terms of terrain, people cannot really take much of it in terms of actually making something grow. I understand when fucking Benjamin from Mystic Quest, he manages to have more potential than Aki Ross. You have a problem. I'm sorry. It's just awful. Ugh. I don't think there's much more that can be said. This is just awful. At the end of the day, again, it's taking to solace the fact that things have gotten better from this. It's a rough start and things are not 100% good again, but better things came after this.
The best thing I can say about this is that they tried.
So, as Homer Simpson said, the lesson is never try. But yeah.
That's what we learned today.
that,
Give
that
up.
will be ultimately learned. There we go. But yeah, that was Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. I hope you enjoyed our ramblings of it. When it comes to the CGI, Final Fantasy movie, only Kingsgrave is left, but that's reserved for the project or when eventually we tackle Final Fantasy 15, since it's part of the package anyway. So might as well wait a bit more on that. So that's the last gift for my birthday. You will not see me much for the rest of September for one reason or another, scheduling conflicts and everything. So stay tuned for whatever we do next. See ya.
Yeah.
Ta-ta.
See ya.